I want to check out the local fur trader. Of course, he's human, male, and slightly bald. I want to check out the local blacksmith. Of course, he is human, male, and slightly bald. I want to check out the local priest. Of course, he is human, male, and slightly bald. Barkeeper, human, male, slightly bald. Seamstress, human, male, slightly bald.
Welcome to SquidPublic. Slay the like button, subscribe for more content, join Patreon for one-shots and other content, as well if you liked the video, leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching.
NPCs, at least for me, are one of the more difficult things where it used to be to create on the fly or create pre-session. If you're not able to play weekly, these rules are going to be a little more crucial as you're going to have larger gaps of time in between building your character and your NPC towards their goals and keeping their motivations constant. The following list/character sheet we're going to use works for both long-term and short-term NPC or people that are obviously going to be involved in your campaign. We have 3 tiers. We're going to go through the whole thing anyways, but the reason why I decided to make tiers is based on how far in the sheet or how much commitment you want to do per each individual, and we'll talk about that later because not all NPCs are created equal. So we have the one-time session, the multi-session, and then obviously long or until the party doesn't need them anymore kind of person. In an ideal world where we can like vacuum time, we would want to do this for everybody, but that's not realistic. If you're playing weekly, you got to make characters quicker, and if you're playing long time apart, you probably want to hone in on the few characters you do have and remember what they want to do rather than making a really in-depth side character that no one's ever going to see again. So what are the 3 basic things we need to do for each character? It's obviously character name, race, generic look, and if you need to or if you want to for fun, like a unique identifier on them. At a minimal, those should always be ready so it feels like the character is at least considered to be a part of the session. Sometimes, they'll walk in, ask for a tavern keeper. It can be a little awkward. Sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't really think of anything. Just always default to at least something. Have some default description you can do, or just say it's a tavern keeper. Not important to the session. Now, once we get past those 3 very easy pieces of information, we're going to get into about 3 separate categories here. And those are motivation, connection, and backstory. I do have additional traits we can talk about later for very long-term characters, but those 3 will obviously be involved with short-term and long-term characters as well. We'll talk about the additional traits at the end of the video, but these are the 3 big ones you want to have down for one-shot, multi-session, and then long-term. Motivation should be a little more obvious, but sometimes we actually go a little too shallow on it because we're the DM and say whatever we say should go, but people are very good at picking out weak motivations. So even though our character may have a motivation, sometimes having a little extra depth or realism to it will make it less in your face. This is just here because I need it to be here. I will be finding a way to attach the PDF I'll be sending or Word document I created. It's just a quick 2-sider, so you can just print it out front and back, have 1 sheet per character. Like I said, I'll try to put that in the description below later. Anytime I'm going to refer to our mayor, his name is Roger Stoneheart. He's a gnome, and some generic looks about him. He's young looking, good complexion, slightly pointed nose, and a little heavy. And a unique identifier, maybe not physically about his body, he's always got a pocket watch that he's checking for time. So anytime I say the mayor, we're talking about Roger Stoneheart. It's just easier to say our mayor. In our example, we're going to pick a mayor in a town where a swamp monster is attacking supply lines. So we have a mayor, and their motive is to obviously get rid of the swamp monster. Pretty easy. Now we can obviously convolute this with the person's backstory and motivations. The motivation is to get rid of the swamp monster, but we want to figure out the why. So why could be, are they just honestly trying to help the people in the town and this is a main support line to the town? Without it, people will starve? Or are they receiving top-down or bottom-up pressure and it's pushing them to kill the swamp creature even though maybe it's not as big of an issue as it may appear? Just to go a little further, did a family member or friend try to leave the town recently and died to this monster, so it's more personal vengeance than it is helping people? Or is there no swamp monster and the mayor's actually in cahoots with a couple of brigands around and he's getting a split of the shares from everything that gets looted from his town and towns trying to come to his? Ultimately, we need to determine what is the true motivation, because obviously if they are working with bandits, they're not going to flat out tell the party, oh yeah, there's no swamp monster. They might have you go on a wild goose hunt and be like, oh, you didn't find it? Okay. And you leave and then they keep attacking. But at least the mayor gets to say, hey, I hired some people. They didn't find anything. Sorry about that. But for this one, we're going to stick with the most simplistic style to show you how in-depth you can go, even as simple as the mayor does want a swamp monster killed or pushed out, and that is true. There's no twist to it. There is a swamp monster. It is attacking supply lines, and the mayor wants it gone. But we can still give a lot of personality, backstory, and connection to this mayor. So that's motivation. In my sheet, I have past motivations, current, and future, and we'll go a little more into that later, because it is important. Not everyone's going to keep the same motivation. Past motivations probably led to current motivations, and current motivations will probably spring up a few questions of, well, if they complete this, what's the next step? It's very important for a long-term character to have past, current, and future motivations, because it doesn't catch you off guard. Because if a character completes something and then you sit there and go, uh-oh, this was their whole story, it could mean they're done now, but if they're going to stick with the party, it'd be nice if they had a future motivation somewhat planned. It doesn't have to be concrete, but I would definitely not be caught off guard by only worrying about the past and current motivations and totally forget about planning for future. So I know motivation and connection can be similar, but they're not completely similar. Motivation is kind of the why they're doing it and how they're doing it. And the connection is, well, they're a mayor in the town, obviously. So they're connected to the world by being a mayor. And we can obviously go deeper into this. We can say he was recently appointed, so he's a newer mayor. How does he work in his connection? He's newer. Well, how did he get appointed? Was it the people who voted him in? Or did he actually get put in by someone above him? So the people in the town don't really know him, but let's just say a noble family or some politicians appointed him unjustly to this position. So now you could have ties in, he knows a royal family or politicians, or the common people thought he would be good, and now he's not. So you could be kind of like a Folktown hero, or some dude that got put onto this position that doesn't deserve it. It's very important to depend on how he's connected, because his connection to the town could easily be why he's acting the way he is and his motivation. They're very similar, but they're also very different. So if we want to add up motivation and connection, let's just say we currently have a mayor who has a monster attacking the town, and this is his first life or death task as a mayor. And let's just say he was not voted in by the people. He was actually placed there by a few politicians he's buddy-buddy with. So he has his first real task, threatening his town, and he was appointed by higher-ups. So the people below him may not like him, and the people above him may be applying pressure. So there is a lot of pressure on this mayor to solve the swamp monster issue. So how could this manifest in his behavior? Because essentially we want to use motivations and connections and logically think of where behaviors could come from. So a logical behavior could be rather frantic, disregard for the common person because they know they don't like him, so he just needs to do a good job for the people above him. He may be results oriented and not necessarily morally driven, and he may even just need you to bring back anything just to get the politicians off his back, even though the problem may not be solved. He may have a lying, conniving, disregard kind of style, maybe frantic personality going on here. And we kind of already hinted at backstory, but to give this mayor a backstory, we're going to kind of obviously talk about the past and the current, because I mean it is a backstory. So once we get the backstory, this is really going to be at a minimal, a multi-session or long-term character. I wouldn't create too big of a backstory for one-shot characters because most likely they'll never be seen again, or if they die, you kind of did all that work for nothing. If they need a crucial point to their backstory, absolutely add it, but I wouldn't go as in-depth as I have in my sheet and as much as we'll talk about in this video. And the one last thing is, I found creating backstories in a purely open world a little difficult because it forces you to write a lot of additional content that you can't forget. You obviously don't want to contradict yourself later. Writing a character in a more railroad or structured style is a lot easier because you already have generic lore. The towns you're probably going to be in for a little more than just a single session, so you can really build upon the backstory of the character, but also the lore of the town and the area and what you might be doing there. I'm going to read off my list here real quick, but just bear with me here. Typical backstory elements are: where did they grow up? How was their upbringing? Past professions. Did they have a tragic event? And how did they get to their current position or situation in life? These questions should prompt or lead you to obviously how the character may act in future situations, why they are the way they are right now, or how they're stuck in their literal current situation. You kind of get their backstory and go, oh, and that's how you ended up here, and that's how we're going to end up with our mayor. If you want a few additional notes of flavor, this would be for super long term or many sessions. You can do marital status, favorite activity, biggest pet peeve, are they serious or silly, start any businesses, favorite memory, life philosophy, or saying when times are hard. This just kind of adds an extra personal characteristic to them, because obviously if they're single, they might live the single life. If they're married with 3 kids, that's obviously going to affect how they do their decisions. Their favorite activity may lead to some fun side session where, let's just say they love horseback riding or something, who knows. Something not too out there, but, something you didn't know about them, but you had something ready. So like I said, I wouldn't do that for all your NPCs, but especially for ones that are going to be around a lot and really help your characters throughout the campaign. It wouldn't hurt having a few extra fun flavors thrown in there. And we also have emotional intelligence traits in the character sheet. So applying this to our mayor, I'm going to read off the sheet again. They grew up in the town. They were brought up with strong connections due to their parents being in politics, so obviously a generational thing to be in politics. Their past profession was helping raise support for friends and family in politics, so once again, just going off the idea, this is their life. A tragic event was supporting someone who ended up being a tyrant and really didn't rule well, so it's kind of a stain on that person's career that they helped support someone who essentially was a tyrant. And then obviously, their current position, all the connections they've made in the past, they decided it was time for our mayor to receive a chance. Filling in the extra stuff, this person was to be around for many sessions or a long time. They're in a political marriage, but their partner wants out because it's a political marriage and they don't really care about it. Favorite activity is attending parties thrown by the upper elites, who wouldn't if you were in this position. Biggest pet peeve is people not having loyalty. Loyalty over other stuff is much more important to people in politics. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Very key for this person. Has been in the political business their whole life, never started any business, but has definitely been around the politics area. And the last two, their favorite memories, their parents' approval of them receiving the mayor opportunity, so very recent. And their favorite life saying is ride with the strong. Once again, the loyalty, stick with people who are capable. Kind of get your emotions out of the way. Then we come to voice. I kind of left voice out of the original ones because this is really the icing on the cake. It's very difficult for us as average people to do voices well, keep them consistent, and have them not be too distracting. Think about how often on a regular basis you make different voices or try different accents. Probably not very often. Therefore, you're not well trained in it, and it's very hard for you to do it subconsciously. So you're going to have to think about doing your voice, and you may be forgetting vital pieces of information because you're worried about doing your accent. I will be doing a whole video one day on different types of voices, starting from easy to obviously super complex. But let's talk about a few easy things you can do for voices that can let people know this is this character, or that this person might be slightly different and we should perk up a bit. And you don't always have to change your voice, like high, low, make it sound super, think about Yoda from Star Wars. The sentence structure is so unique. If someone starts speaking like Yoda, right? You don't need to change your voice to sound like Yoda. If you speak like him, people will know. So something as simple as that is very important. So to kind of go with that, maybe the person talks really slow and you don't have to change their voice. Or maybe they're a super fast talker, and just by talking faster, people already know that this person's going to be something different. And you don't have to worry about really doing a different voice because all you're doing is talking faster. So you can really do different voices just by changing your speed. Maybe how loud they talk. Maybe how loud they talk. You know what I mean? You can really just based on speed, how loud, maybe pauses, maybe the person, because I know my natural speak is very da-da, 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 da-da. Because when I'm editing my videos, it's just for fun, I'll find often I have a lot of long pauses. And that's because my natural speaking is to do da-da-da-da, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, da-da. Like, I take these, like, natural pauses. So you could do something like that. You could say, so you could have someone saying, well, it's behind the trees over there where we used to kind of go as kids to do fishing. It's just kind of like laissez-faire, little slower. The person's accumulating their thoughts. They're not always on top of everything they want to say. They're kind of working through it. And that can be a voice. Now, you can obviously add an accent later if you want or make it sound goofy, but the initial speed and structure and sureness is a voice in itself. So don't always worry about being over the top voices because it's very difficult to remember accents. And I'll kind of give you an example why. If you write down someone's an over the top fast talker, that's a little easier to remember than like someone with a Nordic accent that's an elf. You're like, what would that even be if you saw that in your notes? But if you saw over the top fast talker compared to Nordic elf, you'd be like, I don't remember what the Nordic elf sounds like. However, I can do over the top and a fast talker. So those would obviously give you way more clues on what this character sounded like than being very descriptive. So consider that when you're doing your voices. I'm just going to end this video with a couple of concluding thoughts. One, I did add emotional aspects to the sheet, and I'll read them off to you. And these are just questions. They can be yes, no, or maybe. So are they independent? That kind of matters. Are they going to cling to the party? Do they want to be a part of the party? Does it take time for them to warm up and share with the party? Are they impulsive? Maybe they're extremely impulsive. Maybe they are very rigid and orderly. A kind of funny question. Are they happy? Are they a miserable grumpy grump, I have motivated and I have motivation. People can have motivations, but they don't necessarily need to be motivated to do them. We've met people like that and we have felt like that. So it's kind of fun. They may have these grandiose motivation or idea and they just do not have the energy to do it. Are they flexible? Kind of comes back to, are they rigid? Optimistic. Maybe they're just a curmudgeon and, the first thing that goes wrong, they go, oh, game over. I'm not going to live my dreams, So that'd be kind of a fun thing to do. And then we have assertive. Are they willing to kind of butt in front of the party and be like, look, I'm going to take care of this. You guys have been lollygagging. We're going to be like, well, I'd really like for this to get done, guys. So, if you want to eventually help do it for me, that's okay. Like no pressure. I don't want to push you, but, it'd be great maybe if we did something. You could have someone like really wish-washy who's just afraid to say what they want. That's kind of fun because I'm willing to bet in your group you have someone who is assertive or upfront. They're going to be like, oh, you want us to do it? They'd be like, well, it would be nice. They'd be like, well, too bad. And then that person would be like, why did you ask? They'll give like that passive-aggressive like, oh, okay, like, thanks for being a jerk. So it'd be kind of fun to have someone who's not assertive. And then obviously you could have NPCs where it's like, I don't care what you say. We're going to go do it. So those emotional aspects, I'll call them, emotional intelligence, whatever you call them, are just nice little fun flavors. You can add them to anybody, one shot, multi-session long, because they can really bring out a unique character just by honing in even on one or two of those questions. You don't have to answer all of them and do all of them. Let's just say you have an impulsive, assertive person. You can imagine what that looks like, right? Oh, I see the situation. I'm going to go now. I don't care. I'm not going to think about it. Just bam, right in there. And that could make for a lot of fun times. It could also make for a lot of bad times for your party. So even by answering one or two of those emotional aspects with the person's motivation could really bring them to life. And to bring it all back, you really need to think about your lifestyle, like your real lifestyle, and the time you have for D&D. If you play monthly, you can get away with doing NPCs having a little more backstory because you have a whole month or two maybe, or maybe an extra week. You can really flesh out other NPCs. Now, the only drawback about having more time away is you need to be very well documented in your notes what people sound like, their motivations, and where they're at. And that's where this sheet would come into great play, is because you could write it all down, front and back, one page per person. Most of the important stuff's on the front page, so really you could just page through all the front stuff and get reacclimated with the character. If you play weekly, you're really going to probably have to pick and choose. All right, who gets the most attention on backstory, because I have to plan the whole session and also progress my NPCs while I progress my characters. Extremely difficult to do. So in a situation, we say we have a doorman and a contract giver. We have 2 hours. I would not recommend splitting your 2 hours 1 and 1, one for the doorman and one for the contractor, unless both are going to be vitally important. If you're going to meet the doorman/servant once, give them a name, a race, and generic look, and if you want for fun, give them a unique identifier or emotional aspect. But other than that, he is a doorman. If you're going to meet him once and done, or like maybe just that session, I really wouldn't go too much farther. Now, if they're going to constantly talk to the contractor, let's just say for multiple sessions, I would obviously go into, well, do they have any weird motivation? What's their backstory and how are they connected? It doesn't have to be super deep, but the characters may be naturally inclined to say like, hey, how did you end up giving contracts to kill monsters? And how do you have authority? And, like they may just have a natural few questions, and it'd be nice for you to be like, okay, well, this person used to work with the old guard. The guards liked him. He's great at paperwork. They put him there. His current motivation is to eventually be, like promoted to somewhere out of this job. Or maybe he hates the job and his motivation is to get out of it. And if he gets people to complete 20 contracts, he's done, like something fun like that. It doesn't have to be super in depth, but just enough to understand where this contractor's coming from and enough of a personality that he's just not a block of wood. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think below and if you have any tips as well.